Hello everyone. Welcome to our talk. We are going to show you how to follow some digital breadcrumbs. First things first, some introductions. I'm Julia, and I'm one of the founding members of OSINT Switzerland. We are an association with the goal to spread OSINT knowledge in Switzerland. And this is Antonio.
I'm Antonio La Torre. I'm a founding member and board member of OSINT Switzerland.
Which just means that you have more to do than I have.
A little bit.
And full disclosure, these slides are mostly slides that our president, Ivano Somaini, has presented before. We have tweaked them a little bit, but it's basically his brainchild. First, I would like to do some definitions with you. What is open source intelligence actually? And for the purpose of this demonstration, we just mean by it intelligence produced through information that can be found publicly available on the internet. Sometimes there might be a login wall, like in social media before it, to access information, but mostly it is open to everyone and can be found. Also, I would like to put an ethical disclaimer here. While you might have heard some presenters already talk about do not try this at home because it might be illegal, here we are in the legal gray area most of the time, but sometimes we are definitely not in the gray area in the ethical standpoint, so please keep that in mind. Don't use this for bad things. Stay on the good side of the force. And I would like to start with a small case study first. Oh, shit. Oh, sorry. I have to try that again. Sorry, there seems to be no sound. There we go.
Thank you, bro. What's the best part of your job?
Okay, we try again.
My man, what do you do for a living?
No way. I do cybersecurity. I love your TikTok.
Thank you, bro. What's the best part of your job?
Honestly, I hate my job. So.
Okay, that is a sentiment I cannot confirm. But doing cybersecurity, maybe he should be a little more aware about what his employer could find about him. Of course, we all have bad moments. Maybe they just caught him off guard. But this demo will quickly show you how easy it actually is to find someone. So we're just gonna take a quick screenshot of his face. Then we copy this to clipboard. Then we plug this into Google just to see. And Google comes up short. However, there is a second reverse image search platform called Pimize that is a lot better. And if I start the search here, this is just updated, so this will take longer than it used to. But I have prepared this in advance, and you just need to believe me that when I say Pimize is way better, we find a lot more pictures of this person, right? And on first glance, it looks like the same person. And then if we copy some of these pictures into Google, they actually find a link to the University of Richmond. And this person seems to be a baseball player. So on the first glance, not cybersecurity, right? We can figure out his height and weight, but nothing useful in terms of confirming whether this is actually the person we are looking for. But if we Google his name, then the first hit we have is his LinkedIn profile, or a LinkedIn profile. And we can see here on the profile picture, it looks like the same guy, right? Also, he works at Darktrace, which is a cybersecurity company, so it seems to be the person we are looking for. And that took, 2 minutes? So, it's very easy to find people on the internet, and therefore what happens on the internet doesn't stay on the internet. Good. And with that, we go over to our first prepared case study. We are trying to find Nemo, and Antonio is going to tell you how we did that.
So for data privacy reasons, we had to anonymize all personal identifiable information on this case. However, the structure of the investigation remains the same, so you will be able to follow the entire path of investigation, just we're finding Nemo instead of finding the actual person. So we got a call from Nemo's dad asking us where Nemo was living, right? Because he got lost. Nemo is this famous musician, and so for that reason, there's quite some information that we can find online. So first step, Nemo apartment. So we look for the Nemo's apartment, and we find a couple of pictures of Nemo in front of his house. It looks like a very nice chalet with some stones in front, as you can see here, and a dog and some other information. So we can do a little bit more of Googling, Nemo house, and we find the house description of Nemo, him drinking coffee inside of his house, and it tells us, okay, this house is located in the green countryside outside of Auckland, New Zealand. Because, of course, this is Auckland, New Zealand. So we know we have Nemo and we have Auckland, New Zealand, so pretty easy. Nemo, Auckland, New Zealand. What do we find? We find there's a company called Nemo Productions, which is located on Sargent Road number 5 in Auckland. And if we see the satellite view of this house, we see the rooftop, which looks a little bit like the chalet that we saw before. And now we can confirm it by using Google Street View. And we see this image, and, well, the balcony looks pretty much the same. Now we see the stairs here, and if you look very close into the picture, you can see the dog there. So we're pretty sure this is his house. So then we call Nemo's dad and we tell him, hey, we found him, he's in Auckland. And he tells us, yeah, no, that's actually where we used to live. But he changed his address and he hasn't told me where he lives now. So, okay, we go back to our pictures and then we see these two images. And on the first view, you might think, oh, there's the same house. But actually, no. If you see, the balcony is different, and just because they have, some stones in front and it's a wooden house, it's actually, we're not talking about the same house. You also see here, there's a lot of trees behind, there's no trees behind. So we fall into something that we call in OSINT confirmation bias, which basically you assume based on the information that you have been looking for, that the outcome that you found is actually what you think you found, but it's not the one. But we know Nemo has this company called Nemo Productions. So every time you move places, you have to, in the registry of companies, say that you change your address. So we can look for that, and then we find, okay, Nemo Productions in Auckland. We know now Nemo's real name is actually Thomas Müller, and this Thomas Müller was previously living in Auckland, New Zealand, but now lives in Sydney, Australia. So we have to start from the beginning. So we have the image, we do a little bit of searching, and always when you do OSINT, you have to try to look into different sources. So another source might be, for example, YouTube. Now, because Nemo is a famous musician, he also is giving interviews on a regular basis. And we find an interview where he gives it outside of his house. And we see now that we have the same balcony, so we can confirm that this is the house that we're searching for. On top of that, we see here in the background that there's a mountain and there's a big body of water. So, okay, we have a mountain, a body of water. We know Sydney, Australia. How difficult can it be? And it's actually quite difficult. So, when you get to this point where you cannot find further information about the person, you have to start looking in their surrounding. So, people they have relationships with, or people that might post stuff that they are unaware of. So, in this case, we go and look for Peach Starfish, who is his wife. Now, Peach is also a pretty privacy-aware person. She doesn't post a lot of information. Her Facebook profile is pretty locked down. But we do find two pictures. And now, also by having researched Nemo quite a few times before, we know that his second house was actually, he built it. So it was a house that they, together with his wife, they built it. And we see here in this picture what might look like a construction site. And also she's carrying a big log, so, might be part of the process of building his house, or their house. And then when we see in the back, we see a big body of water, and we see what looks like the mountain that we saw in the first image. So let's go to Sydney, Australia. Let's lie next to the big body of water and the mountain. And yeah, actually we can confirm it's the same mountain. If you look closely, there's this area which has no trees. And if you look closely here, it's the same area. Now, obviously on this picture, we're way farther away from the mountain, and we're actually much at a lower altitude level. On the second picture, we're higher up and we're closer to the water. So we know we are on the right area looking toward the right mountain, but a little bit off. So let's look at the satellite imagery. So in this case, you would think, okay, yeah, I mean, Sydney, Australia is pretty big. So how do we locate this? Now, this is a point where you have to start to pinpoint certain areas in images that for people might be just trivial, but for OSINTers, they give us a lot of information. For example, here in this area, we see a small town, like a small agglomeration, which if you look into the main image, you see here, this is Rose Bay. Now, Rose Bay, you cannot see it because of the geographical area. You cannot see it from every place of Sydney, Australia. So we can maybe try to trace the line of view from which you can see Rose Bay from Sydney, Australia. So that would be more or less this. With a little bit bad painting skills, but yeah. So we know the house has to be located in this area right here. So to the left of this line, to the right of this one, because this is where Sydney, Australia ends. And we know that this area right here is close to the water, but not too high up, so that you're already on the mountains. Perfect. So now we just have to look through all of this area to find a house. Now, problem is, this area is quite rural, and you don't have Google Street View there. So what do? You Google a little bit more. And then you find an article where there's an interviewer that went to visit him to his house and got to know his wife and children and stuff. And he talks a little bit about the house. So in this case, there's a prosa description of the house, and he says that there's a bumpy path leading to the house through a small forest, and it opens up to a view of a large farmhouse with a magnificent view of the sea. And so basically, you know, the house lies in a clearing inside of the forest with a bumpy road going through it. On top of that, our guy is really active, and as I said, we have to check other sources. So, for example, news is another source that we can use. And in this interview, he actually shows a picture that he drew of the top of the house, or how he actually wanted his house to look like. Now, it's actually even very nice because he even put a compass, so we can put the picture on the right way to know in Facebook, kind of like, in Google Maps, kind of like where is the location of the house. So after spending a lot of hours looking through stuff, we find what looks like a bumpy road in the middle of a forest, and we have a clearing that is pretty close in that area that we drew already before, looking towards the lake. And we see it's the same house, and if we actually look at this image, you might see that even the window is there, and we have here where the chicken are living, and some other parts here, for example, the stones that are here. So pretty much we found the address. Now, to avoid being victims of confirmation bias, we have to somehow look for it in a different way. So, as I said before, there's no Google Street View. So what we do is we go to the topographical maps, and then we find the actual street and the actual number of the house, and we see P. Sherman 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney, Australia. If we look for it and we see it for Nemo Productions, we see that the company has now moved to P. Sherman 42 Wallaby Way, Sydney, Australia.
And now we found Nemo, we're continuing with the fish scenes, and now we're finding Dory, because it's the next movie. Dory is an influencer, and she posts a lot of pictures on social media, and she's kind of a lifestyle designer, high-end influencer. So she posts pictures with a lot of designer content. For example, these handbags. These handbags, for those of you who don't know, they retail about at like 10,000 francs each. So pretty valuable targets there. And if you look at her closet, she has a lot of presumably very expensive items. You can also see the skylight here, which suggests her closet is somewhere on the top floor of a building. If you look for her through Google, you will find also some interviews, and you can locate her house. This is the Google Map satellite view of her house, and one of these skylights is the entry to her closet. This is the house from the front, so it's like 4 or 5 stories up. And she also lives in a quite big neighborhood, so her house is kind of connected through roofs to other houses. And this picture here is just the other side of this big house, so this little door here is this corner here. Dory also likes to travel. And on this day, she posted a picture of her and her son and labeled it with vacation time with her son. She also included where she was on vacation, but I cut that off. Just, she was not at home. Unfortunately for Dory, at the time she posted this picture, her neighbor's house looked a little more like this. Now we have a ladder to the roof. And what some pretty social media savvy burglars exactly did was climb up this construction site to the roof, walked across the roof, and used a telescope ladder to actually break into her closet. The ladder they left behind, presumably because they had stolen 25 designer handbags with a total worth of around 800,000 francs. So OSINT can have impact, especially if you show where you live exactly. And now we're moving on with our last case.
Perfect, thank you. So we ran out of fish characters from Disney to look for. So now we're going to search for Wally. So Wally is a pretty interesting person because he's stating that he has a Facebook profile, but he's pretty privacy aware. So he has all of the privacy settings set to nobody can see anything. And he says, okay, I have my Facebook profile configured like this. Nobody can find any information about me. So Wally actually ends up in what we call a hiding paradox. So Wally is the special case where he uses social media, but at the same time, he's quite privacy aware. So he kind of like shows up from amongst the crowd. If we go and start the search by Facebook profile, we might look for Wally Ware. So we find a couple of profiles, one profile even with the Wally Ware picture and stuff. But there's an interesting profile here, and that is the first one. So the first one is the only profile that you cannot add as a friend. So that already is kind of like a trigger, right? On top of that is the only profile that has some kind of like picture that is not of the face of a person. It's just a Muppet. So that already seems kind of weird. If we visit the profile, we see that there's actually no information, no pictures, no information, no friends, no anything. So pretty difficult to find something about this guy from here, right? Now the problem is that there's something called the Facebook ID. This Facebook ID remains constant even throughout, if you change your name or if you change other stuff of your Facebook profile, that Facebook ID will remain constant. And you can use a couple of things, you can do a couple of things with this Facebook ID. Now here we're entering a little bit of a gray area. Some OSINTers don't like this type of way of getting information. So please don't do it at home and don't tell anybody that we did it. So when you reset your Facebook password, you always get shown like, hey, to where do you want to send this code, right? Now, unbeknownst to Wally and to a lot of people, you can actually not only reset it via using the email address or the mobile phone number, but you can also use the Facebook ID. So you don't actually have to know their Facebook, their mobile number or their email address. So once we plug in the Facebook ID, we get some information. One of them is the last 2 digits of the phone number, and another one is a couple of digits from the email address. Now, Facebook is very nice to us, and the number of asterisks, it actually corresponds to the number of characters. So we know it starts with a W, we know it ends with an E, we know his name is Wally Ware, so might as well be Wally.ware, right? Now, the domain starts with an S and so ends on CH, and there's only a certain amount of domains that start with S and on CH, so Swiss Online it is. We have it. Now we attempt to use the same password reset trick, but now with the email that we found. So we get confirmed the last 2 digits. Now we don't get the picture, and we find the entire email address. So thus stating that there's an account on Facebook using this email address. Now, until here, we cannot be 100% sure that this is actually the same account. I mean, the probability that both accounts with an email start with W, ending with E, and using S and ending with CH is pretty big that they have actually the same last 2 digits. I mean, the probability is quite small. But we don't want to end up in this confirmation bias that we talked before. So let's go a step further. If we add an account to our Outlook email, just a certain account, we can call it however we want, OSINT test or whatever, it will show us if that account has a related LinkedIn profile. So by doing that, we can then find the LinkedIn profile of this person, and we know that he is head of the secret unit, hide and seek. We know that we have a couple of friends in common, like Mickey Mouse and Bernard Piff, and we know also that he studied at ETH. And because we know this person, we know that this is actually the real person that we're talking about. Pretty good. So what can we do from here? We plug in the email to have I been pwned and see if it has appeared in any data breaches. Now this one hasn't, and that's not because he has never been a victim of a data breach, but this most likely says that it's a newer email address. So that leads us to believe that probably this person has an older email address which he was using in different kind of social media accounts. So let's Google a little bit more, and we found that our Walliware is really politically active. So from there, we find that he's actually part of a commission. In this commission, he's a member, and there's other people that he might be friends with. So we know that all of his friends are private, right? So we don't know who he is friends with. But what we can try to do is use the Facebook mutual friends trick. So we know that Otlaf Ilaf, who is the president of the commission, might be actually friends with him, or they might know each other because, I mean, they're both members of this commission. And luckily to us, he has his friends open. So what we can do is take the UID from Itlaf Otlaf, take the UID from Walliware, and then check which friends in common these two accounts have. And we find a couple of friends. Now, if we do this recursively with every friend that we find that has their Facebook friends open or publicly available, we can pretty much get all of the list of friends that Walliware has on Facebook. Furthermore, there's a lot of cases in which we don't know, and some pages publish some PDF documents or some information about us that we don't know, and in this case, also his home address was leaked. So, pretty nice. We have some additional information that we can then perhaps Google and see what we find. Now, in this Versteckstraße in Zürich, we have that the Wandawali there's a company registered on this address under Wandawali. Now, Wandawali is another person, but has a company registered on the same address as our guy Wally where he's living. So we might assume that this Wandawali has some kind of relationship with this guy. So we look in Facebook for her. Yeah, there is her profiles, but she's actually pretty private. We don't find anything until we find one comment where Walliware made a comment saying "my girl." So we pretty much can assume that they have some kind of relationship. Now, if you've been following us in Switzerland, we published a post about how bad the reset password functionality of PayPal is. So it's the worst of all, because it gives you not only the last 2 digits, but the last 4 digits of the phone number, additionally the first 3, and then some other digits of the email address. So by using this, we can try to figure out some more information. On top of that, depending on the browser you use, and if it's in incognito mode or not, like meaning you have like some kind of like session or not, PayPal will return you different kind of information. So in certain cases, it will even return you which credit card it is linked to this account and the last 2 digits of it. By looking at other kind of browsers and other kind of incognito modes and these combinations, we can find even an old email address. Because as you see here, the email address finishes in LI and it has 3 characters in front. So remember when I told you that probably he had an older email address, where this is how we figured out he actually had. There are some tools like APOs, a very famous OSINT tool that will pop you and display you all of the accounts that he has related with this email address, like for example Amazon, Spotify, archive.com, and we can actually now go to Have I Been Pwned and see what we find. Now, have I been pwned will display us some other LinkedIn accounts that were eventually leaked with this email address. And on top of that, he's a gamer of League of Legends, I think. And from there, we can also further on take our investigation. Now, there are some pages where you can actually find data leaks. So we find 3 plaintext passwords related to this wally@.swissonline.ch, which obviously we don't know if they're valid or not because we won't try them, right? So now let's try to find the phone number of this person. So doing some Google dorking, we can search for the name, the last 4 digits, and it's actually not very hard then to find the phone number of this person. And we see again the same email address that we have been working on. Finally, if we synchronize the contact with our phone, a lot of applications ask us like, hey, this person is in your contacts, do you want to add him as a friend? So this way we can figure out other accounts that he might have, like Skype, LinkedIn, Gmail, Facebook, Vivino, Duolingo, and so on. And on top of that, depending on the phone that he has, if we have an Apple phone and he has an iPhone, it will ask us if we want to call him via FaceTime. And Android, obviously not, because Android doesn't have FaceTime. So using that trick, we can figure out that he uses an Android phone. Now, there's also the WhatsApp status trick, which, WhatsApp in the past, it showed you when you were online or not. Nowadays, you can shut that off. But for people who still have it, it is possible to use some kind of software to track when he's online and when he's offline. And this way, figure out his kind of like way of living, if he went on vacation, how he's sleeping, when he's waking up, when he's going to the bathroom, all of this information, basically by knowing when he's going into WhatsApp. So from a restricted Facebook profile, we gathered several accounts, several passwords, personal relationships, home address, where he works, where he studied, his email, his LinkedIn, what kind of card he uses, and also that he is politically active. So if you want to know more and you like this presentation and you're interested in learning all of these techniques and sharing this kind of stuff with people who are also interested about it, here we are. We're OSINT Switzerland, and thank you very much.